Am I the asshole for intentionally blindsiding my pregnant roommate to avoid a confrontation? I have been living with my roommate, Holly, for almost 1.5 years. Holly wasn't a good roommate. I was doing most of the chores. I didn't like her much, but she seemed to think that I was a really good friend of hers. Anytime I tried to talk to her, she would either deflect or give excuses. She told me once that it was my fault because I do it better than her and she is now not used to doing chores. 6 months ago, she told me that she got pregnant. I was covering half of her rent too because she didn't have any money. I wanted to ask her to move out, but again, she would say something, or give excuses or start crying, and I would back off. Few months later, situation has got worse for her. Quit her job. Couldn't find another. We were speaking one day and she told me how lucky she felt having a friend like me. She thanked me for being so nice about the rent and the food, and she also told me she is not feeling scared about being a single mom as I would be there to help her. I freaked out hard. Helping out a person when they are in a spot is one thing. But it was clear that she was expecting me to help her even after the baby was born. I didn't want that. Another month passed by. I was making plans to leave. Me and my friend found an apartment to share. On September 3rd, when she wasn't at home, I moved all my things to my new apartment. Since most of the things outside her room was mine, the apartment was pretty bare when I left. I called my landlord and informed him that I won't be renewing my lease, which was ending at the end of Sept. He promised to return my security deposit in full at the end of the month. After that, I left a message to Holly that I have moved out and she has to talk to the landlord about her situation from next month. To be clear, I paid my share of the rent for this month to the landlord and told him to ask Holly about the rest and about making a new lease, new security deposit. I refused to attend any more calls from her. Bottom line is, I left a 8 to 9 months pregnant woman who was depending on me for many things, like rent, food etc., on her own during a pandemic while she was jobless. She had left me multiple voicemails and telling me how I should have talked to her and at least given a heads up instead of just moving out. She told me that she is struggling a lot and she is about to give birth soon and that I need to help her. She is saying that it's shitty of me to help her so much and then abandon her. She told me that she wants to meet me and explain things. She thinks that talking to her would make me move back. I refused to respond. All my friends have conflicted opinions. Some think I could have just talked to her and resolved it. Some think that I should have at least given her a heads up. Some think I should move back in. Many think that it's not my fault at all. Again, she has 1 month to figure things out with the landlord before the lease ends. I didn't talk to her because it never worked in the past and I didn't want to be guilt-tripped out of moving. Here for unbiased opinions. Am I the asshole? Yes, she was taking advantage of you and that makes her an asshole. But you went low when you could have gone high here and at least have given her a heads up about it. And left her in a serious bind. You had the opportunity to remove yourself from the situation and still be the bigger person, but you chose to screw her over on your way out. So of course your roommate is in the wrong for many things, but at the same time you indulged her and covered a lot of her expenses. Were you firm in stating that you won't take over her expenses anymore? You really didn't give her a lot of time to find a new place. I don't know the market where you are, but here you don't get an apartment in 1 month, and it seems to me that you deceived her. She was convinced you would continue to help out, so I don't think you were firm enough with your plans. Of course she shouldn't depend on you and should be a responsible adult, so she's _a 2. You are the asshole because had multiple chances to do the adult thing and use your words and tell her how you felt about her not pitching in and contributing. Instead, you just bailed on someone without giving them a chance to make other arrangements. She is the asshole for being a mooch and expecting you to take care of her for free. She was coasting by on your generosity, which is wrong. But what you did was also really shitty. Especially since you pretty much left her 1 month to sort out a new living situation while she might give birth at any moment. I'm not saying that you needed to help her figure it all out, but that an extra month's heads up before the lease was up probably would have been a kinder thing to do. Of course you are the asshole. You were super nice and supportive for a year and a half, and then ghosted in the night. Like, a basic conversation about your feelings, or hell, just your plans, would have been reasonable. Is she supposed to read your mind? She was expecting too much of you, but you should have told her you were leaving so she could plan. You are the asshole for not having an adult conversation about it and giving her some warning about moving out. Because you were afraid she'd complain or try to guilt trip you? It's fine to just say no, there's no need to justify anything beyond that. Of course you should have told her that you were moving out. You are an asshole for sneaking around like that, as are the friends who told you that your behavior was fine. She's an asshole for being a freeloader. You are the asshole. She at least deserved to know in advance that you were leaving. Now, this girl is about to have a baby and has a matter of weeks to sort something out for herself. It sounds like you should have been a lot more clear on a lot of things regarding your arrangement. She's obviously demented thinking you'd be some substitute parent for her child and your life would have destroyed if you'd stayed, but a heads up would have been kinder. You are the asshole. You acted like a coward and royally screwed her over. You shouldn't have allowed it to get this far in the first place, which is also on you. Her being a bad roommate doesn't excuse anything. But you made your decision. Definitely don't listen to the people saying you should move back in. Tell them to move in with Holly instead. Not the asshole, overall. She seems to be treating you as both parent and partner, when you're neither, and the way you describe her behavior makes her sound like a nightmare. I think you made the right choice, so moving out was a done deal, and it wasn't something to debate. But I do think you could have told her in person once you'd signed the agreement so she had more time to plan. That said, your friends who think you should move back in? The hell with that. Let's see them move in with her then. I'd say former housemate is the asshole, tbh. She might be in a tough situation, but she doesn't seem to be doing much to help improve it. Where's the child's father in all of this? Overall, you've done the right thing. She didn't think you were a friend. She thought you were an easy mark, something to drain dry until you wised up. Now you have, and good for you. Don't feel guilty. She put herself in this situation. Not the asshole. You are the asshole for intentionally doing this. It wouldn't have cost you anything to tell her before you were doing this. Of course she was being unreasonable, but leaving someone a month to figure out a new place to stay with no job is bad enough, with her also being very pregnant and probably not able to move around a lot. It's basically abandonment. You took the coward's way out. You don't have to pay for her rent, or do her chores, but you took the coward's way out by not telling her that you would be moving out. You are the asshole. She shouldn't have put all of that on you. You should have established boundaries earlier and let her know about your plans so she could adapt appropriately. Not the asshole roommate was a mooch and expecting you to continue to help her with her unborn baby, rent and food. You tried talking to her but she started crying. She wouldn't listen. You do not owe this mooch anything. You are not the baby's father or her BF. OMG, you must feel so much better you left that situation. Definitely not the asshole. She quit her job and was freeloading off you. Again, you owe her nothing. I don't think you're an asshole, but I do think you're a coward. She isn't your responsibility, but considering you've been paying for this and that in helping her out with zero indication it was a problem for you, then randomly moved all your stuff while she was gone, and terminated your lease. While she's pregnant and jobless. In a pandemic? I sincerely hope this is a troll post, but if it's not, I hope you live with this guilt for the rest of your life. Edit. I wanted to ask her to move out, but again, she would say something, or give excuses or start crying and I would back off. I didn't wanna be guilt-tripped out of moving. Grow a backbone. You're only going to repeat this cycle with other people if you can't learn to say, no means no. She is obviously an asshole for being manipulative and relying on you so much. She's using you. She might not even realize it. She needs to talk to her family or friends or the father of the baby. She can get welfare due to the child. She'll be alright. It seems that you were absolutely right to presume that she would do anything to pressure you into not moving out and staying there to help her with everything, including a newborn. Not only it's not your responsibility to help her, I also can't see why you should expose yourself to being guilt-tripped by her. Not the asshole. Stand your ground. Everyone sucks here. She is definitely an ass in my mind because I don't like lazy freeloaders. You are not really an ass, but you are a wimp for not telling her you moved out, not making her hold her own in the cleaning department, not making her pay her fair share, etc. You are the asshole. Damn, that's stone cold. At least have the conversation prior. You are the asshole. You definitely should have told her beforehand, and now you've left her in a really shitty and vulnerable situation. It should not be your responsibility to care for her and pay all her bills, but the girl is about to give birth to a baby and you just left her to deal with it on her own. You keep saying she kept guilting you into staying and doing things, but you did not have to cave to the guilt every time. She should have pulled her weight, but you should have called her out on it or made it clear you'd help her for a month before she has to make alternative arrangements. Yes, she should have been a lot more responsible. I mean, she's going to be a parent, but communication is key here. Maybe take that on board with your new roommate. Everyone sucks here for sure. It's obvious why she sucks, but you've given no details about how you tried talking to her in the past. Why so skimpy on those details? How do you not remain firm on such an important topic? And leaving someone you live with who depends on both yours and their own rent to live during a pandemic with no notice is very shitty, regardless of whether or not they're pregnant. And the fact she has to find housing and pop out a baby in less than a month is some spicy extra frosting on the cake. Absolutely not the asshole. Regardless of whether or not she actually saw you as a good friend as opposed to an easy target, she used the absolute shit out of you and she had to have known that. You're not responsible for her life, she's an adult too and she has to learn to grow up and stand on her own 2 feet, especially if she's about to be a mom. Not the asshole. Rough, but sounds like she's a social manipulator. She was taking advantage of your kindness a la rent and quit her job when she couldn't afford to. For your part, though, it's common courtesy to provide notice when ending a lease, especially when someone has made it clear that they were depending on you. The correct move would have been to immediately shut her down when she suggested that you would be there to help her. Hell, the correct move would have been to never help out with rent, or to make sure she understood that you'd sue for the extra rent back upon completion of the lease. In any case, she dug herself a hole and you filled it in. You had every right to move out and every right to not help her. Giving her an heads up is basic manners. You should have told her that you were moving out. Slight, you are the asshole. She took you for granted and definitely relied way too heavily on you, but you set yourself and her up for that for months and then just dipped. That's fucked up. Both of you were wrong. Not the asshole. Maybe she should depend on the sperm donor or family. Not your monkey, not your circus. Not the asshole. You're not that baby's daddy. You clearly did more than enough. You need to grow up and learn to have a conversation with someone even if it makes you or them uncomfortable. You can't always just run away from an issue and then ignore the person because you're worried about a confrontation. Are you going to roll over and be a doormat if your new flatmate pulls a similar move in asking you to cover rent for them, etc.? However, your ex-flatmate was also massively taking advantage of you and the fact that you couldn't stand up to them, so they are also in awe. Not the asshole. Not your circus. Not your monkeys. Everyone sucks here. You intentionally blindsided her when even if you didn't want to talk with her verbally, you could have communicated via text or email. But I understand that you were in a tough situation and Holly shouldn't have been relying on you the way she was at all. Everyone sucks here completely. Her for obvious reasons. But you've basically made a pregnant woman homeless. You couldn't tell her you were moving a month or so ago to at least give her a chance to go through her options. That would have been the decent thing to do. I hope you have learned a lesson here about firmly setting boundaries and expectations. Did Holly even know you had this much of a problem with her? The fact she presumes you'd move back after a chat indicates that she thought there was room for negotiation. Everyone sucks here, Holly, for all obvious reasons. You for not setting clear boundaries. It sounds like you avoid conversation to the point that you make your own life miserable just to not have the confrontation. Unless you learn to speak up for yourself, how do you expect anybody else to know when something is wrong? You didn't have to stay, you didn't have to give her much more than 30 days notice, and you didn't really have to argue with her about it. You could have just said, at the end of the month I'm leaving, and then walked away. You didn't have to have a conversation with her. And yes, it was kind of a whole move to basically ghost her. Not the asshole. Where is the baby daddy in all this? Why isn't he helping to support her? Also, grocery store and fast food jobs are hiring all the time. It's not much, but it's better than no job. She needs to get her act together and not depend on a roommate to provide for 3 people instead of 1. Not the asshole. She was taking advantage of you to begin with. Her being pregnant doesn't matter at all. You're not responsible for her in the slightest, as she should have already seen that writing on the wall. Let this be a lesson on not letting people take advantage of you. Lots of people have problems with confrontation, and maybe you are one of them. Add a roommate who is practiced at being slippery, and I can see why you had trouble speaking with her. After paying most of the rent for so long, the mooch figured she had it made. You were right, to think that the demands were just going to escalate. Nevertheless, it was in your power to insist on having a talk, possibly with the presence of a friend to help you keep focused. She, on the other hand, had to know she was being a mooch and taking advantage of you. You left a jobless, broke, pregnant person in the middle of a pandemic to fend for herself with no advanced warning. While she is not a great person, you did do it on purpose. When she told you that she cherished your friendship and you were freaked out, did you tell her? Sure, communication lines have broken down before, but this one was a huge one. Schedule a time to talk, force her to sit down and listen. You wanted to avoid feeling guilty and staying, then you could have told her in advance that you already found a new place and told the landlord you were moving. You did this intentionally to be mean to her and blindside her. Everyone sucks here, but let's be very clear that you are an asshole as a she. You had plenty of time to tell her to figure out her shit. She sucks clearly, but you had been letting this happen for how long? So you begrudgingly help her, never change the situation, which you could have done at any time by opening your mouth and saying enough. You could have told her at any month of her pregnancy that your plan was to move out and she would no longer depend on you, but you waited until month 8 to 9. That's super fucked up. She sucks, but in this moment I don't know who is worse. You owe her an apology and then kick her out of your life and move on, but don't do so thinking you're right. You're not. Everyone sucks here. Like, yeah, the pregnant lady was being an asshole at first too, but that was cold. A heads up was all that was needed. If she was mad, then fine, she's mad. If she wasn't in very late stage pregnancy, I'd think differently, but if she doesn't have other support, I don't see how an 8 or 9 month pregnant woman is supposed to figure something out in that short a time. You're not the asshole for moving out, but you are for not telling her. Not the asshole. Impossible to reason with people who will not listen. She was using psychological manipulation to try and rope you in, so you were justified in leaving. But you still should have given her some notice to light a fire under her ass to get things together before just vanishing. She's the bigger asshole, but I wouldn't call you completely justified. I'm a bit conflicted on this one. The sudden and dramatic nature of your pulling up stakes feels a bit assholish, but she's taken advantage of you for months and is basically looking at you like you're the other DNA donor of that child she's about to have. Assuming you're not the father, I don't blame you a bit for wanting to put a stop to her gravy train. Everyone sucks here. I can't decide which person is worse, you or your freeloading roommate. She was your roommate for 1.5 years, and frankly, you let her walk all over you. She absolutely took advantage of you. What you should have done is have an adult conversation long before she was pregnant about how to be an equitable roommate. You had many opportunities and instead you stayed quiet, suffered in silence and told yourself, I'm the better person. And your solution is to walk out on her 1 month before her baby is born and no place to live. You need to grow a backbone and start communicating better, or you will forever be taken advantage of by other people who overstep their boundaries. Trust me, they can smell your weakness. Slight, you are the asshole. You were justified in wanting to leave, but you should have told her you had these issues and that you were going to leave so she had time to prepare to struggle. NTA, you owed her nothing and you would have been on the hook for a baby that's not yours and for a woman who you're not dating. Don't let detractors get to you. They're either users and this method of operation threatens them, or they are people getting used repeatedly and this highlights their inability to stand up for themselves.